Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the people I've never seen before. And good to see everybody else back. And good evening to the Zoomer. Gosh, what happened? Somebody was really excited. Maybe I don't need this, but maybe I do. We'll see. Okay. Does that make a difference? Not really.
Can you turn the receiver on?
Not turned on.
Huh. There it is.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, there it is. Okay. Sure is warm. Did you notice especially in the early morning, the smell of summer? Everything was really, the green was really heated up. It's quite wonderful. And we had a ceremony here today, a Buddha's birthday ceremony, out in the sunshine this afternoon, which was well attended and quite wonderful. We begin that by telling the story of the Buddha's birth, and we ended by having cake and cherries and a nice snack and a time to be together. In this practice, we make room for all of ourselves. We all have many different voices and states of mind that we speak from. And I wanted to talk about that a little bit tonight. In this practice, there are three legs of practice. One is meditation, which is an essential setting aside time to become still, to really become still, to still the mind, to rest the mind. We have study, where we study our own experience very closely. We also study the teachings that have come down to us over the last 2,600 years from the people who have practiced in many different ways, in many different cultures, these same teachings, using the same equipment that we have, the equipment of the mind and the heart, and looking into our experience and everything that creates this life that each of us uniquely has. And then the third leg of the practice is morality, which we generally call character work. Morality is something that we study and we explore through the use of precepts. And there are 16 precepts, which I'll probably talk about next week a bit more. They're guides for looking into our own internal states and how that translates into how we behave in the world and how we respond. But tonight I really wanted to talk about character work. One of the things that can be very confusing in Buddhist practice is the whole teaching of no self. What does that mean? And when we look at character work, what we're looking at is our ego self, and I'm going to talk about that in more detail, which is sometimes defined as obsessive fixity, what we are obsessively fixed on as who we are. All of the habitual ways of and states of mind that we have, ways of narrating our own experience, ways of judging ourselves and others, ways of experiencing our physicality and how we relate in our body, how we live into our body, and what we think we believe, what we think we know, all of the emotions, all of that goes into this obsessive fixity. And one of the things that grows from a life of practice, a continuing practice, a continuous practice, is a real increase in our flexibility. Different ways we can surprise ourselves in experiencing things that we have always experienced, and suddenly we see it in a very different way, or we respond very differently. And that's something that evolves. One of the wonderful teachers, who's also a storyteller, Rafe Martin, has said, and I loved it when he said this, that what we do in Zen practice is we use the tools of practice to become truly mature human beings. So that includes really opening and recognizing and directly appreciating consciousness, the span of consciousness that we have available to us, and everything that the conscious mind, consciousness can pick up outside of words and letters, which is part of the definition of Zen, is outside of words and letters. It's not just what we say, and that would mean, too, it's not just how we narrate our experience. If you think about narration, what you're doing is choosing to relate to certain elements in a very, very broad span of events. We select. We become very selective. And that selection process can become more and more and more narrow. So we come into our character. What is our character? We inherit a lot of the forms that make up our character. We all grew up in families that were comprised of certain individuals who had certain temperaments. And even before that, we came into this world with a certain temperament. So we can be kind of a cheerful kind of person. We can be a melancholic kind of person. There are a lot of different kind of default modes that we tend to identify as who I am. So that somebody can say, oh, I'm a very anxious person, or oh, I'm just a very happy-go-lucky person. Oh, okay, but that's just part of the story. And so this inquiry into character, the character work that we do, becomes very, very nuanced. Over time, we realize more and more, and the people who are older in this room might also be able to agree that it's incredible how much, even after 70 or 80 years, you still discover things about yourself that you never realized. And I think that that's particularly true of people who have a very active spiritual practice. A practice of not turning away, but always turning directly into whatever the experience is. It continues to be more and more rich in detail and nuance, more and more subtle. So last weekend we had a retreat, a sound retreat where we listened to sound. And what could happen initially was, you heard the usual, I mean, let's listen right now. So what did you hear?
Scrub J.
Huh?
Scrub J.
A scrub jay?
The electronics.
A distant motor?
Voices.
Huh?
Voices.
How about ringing in your ears? Anybody have any of that? we tend to disqualify certain kinds of sound, but it's all sound. And it's very rare, if you've ever been in a soundproof chamber, it's like, I don't know, velvet or something. It's absorptive, right? It pulls it out. But if the ambient sound is not being pulled out, then there's a lot of very subtle sounds. So the further we went along in this retreat last weekend, the more subtle the sounds. Yeah. So we look into our own character, we look into what we inherited in the family and from our bloodline and from our culture. So most people, if you haven't thought about it, people grow up in a family that has a certain relationship to money. A relationship to money, attitudes about money, attitudes about wealth, and expectations in relation to that. And our behaviors around that are formed out of that set of beliefs. Or friendship, you grow up with certain experiences of friendship, there's certain qualities of relationship, or how you relate to bureaucracy in all of its many difficult ways that it behaves. And all of that is part of what forms a world that we really believe is real. And in one way, it's real. But in another way, it's not real. And so that's one of the things that we explore in Zen practice is, in what ways is this real? And in what ways is it not? And the teaching about that is, everything is impermanent. So one of the things that we consider, that we assume is when the world is the way it is, we figure it's this way and it will always be this way. We say we feel that way about ourselves too. This is how I am. This is how I will always be. But that's not true. It's not true even on a cell-by-cell basis. The body is always changing. According to what our fixed beliefs are about what makes up the world, we tend to pre-select information that reinforces it. What's that called? There's a term for that.
Confirmation bias. Confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias, thank you. Yeah. You have a set of beliefs and you can be sure it's going to be confirmed. One of the things that people report with extended practice is, wow, I never could get along with my sister. And then after a few years of practice, it's like suddenly, what was the problem? What was the problem that I was having relating? I mean, it's amazing how the view changes. So that's another part of this character work, and another part of practice, Zen practice is we are working toward opening the Dharma eye, developing an ever more lively and open view of whatever is transpiring, as opposed to a fixed view which we bring and impose over everything that comes our way when we haven't been looking at it. But by one of the things that happens when you're sitting, you might begin meditating, and the first thought would be, I'm going to go crazy if I have to sit here and do nothing and not be distracted. I don't know, has anybody here had that experience? And after a while, it's possible to realize that you can just relax in a way you have never relaxed before. And suddenly, this moment of simplicity, of utter simplicity, is wonderful. It's wonderful. It's simple, it's open. So that has consequences when we realize that. What else is not what it seems? What else is a product of my habitual mind states? What other mind states might be available to me? And if I change my mind state, then my behavior is going to be really different. My relationships are going to change. My choices are going to be very, very much more in keeping with well-being. If I can be open and relaxed in relation to whatever is going on, bringing a mind that is not pre-decided about what's going to happen. We don't go pre-decided into our life every day. And I want to just demonstrate what I mean by that. Have you noticed that often you get up in the morning and you have a plan, and you think you know what the day is going to bring, and right away it begins to go sideways. It's not what you were planning. That's a wonderful opportunity to recognize how that's always true. We come into our experience of our life, and we are identifying ourselves as a certain way. Maybe that's not the whole story. Maybe there is a way for me to be less stressed. Maybe I can be guided by what is more native to me. The way that we collectively live, and we take it as a given, as a value. To be so busy, it means we're really being a real human being. To be so busy, beyond our ability to manage. It's so busy. Oh, I'd love to get together with you, but I'm just too busy. So busy. Now, that can be very stimulating at certain times and at certain ages and certain circumstances. But it can also be incredibly stressful and unuseful in terms of coming forth with all of your gifts and being warm-hearted, being understanding, being wise. What is intelligence? Intelligence is the ability to take a real look at a certain set of conditions and have a skillful way of evaluating what is needed and how to go about it. But so much of our efforts are wasted. We call it wasted dharma. In the dharma world, we wasted dharma. It's like you might notice that we're always admonished, if you're trying to get a lot of things done, make sure you take breaks. It's going to work better to take breaks. But that's counterintuitive, isn't it? To take some time off. Go take a walk in the middle of the day. What do you mean? I'm too busy. I have too much to do. Take a look and see if that's true. So this is all under the heading of character work. And so now a little bit about ego. One of the misunderstandings is that if we say that if you're enlightened, you don't have any ego. And that's really not true. First of all, it's useful in its own way to have a focus of control and a certain sense of familiarity with our own self-equipment, right? What's meant is that if my definition of myself is I'm a certain way, you're a certain way, I'm a certain way, it's always going to be this way, I can do this, I can't do that, right? Then I do not have much room to grow or to notice what does not corroborate that view. So if I'm very lonely, nobody ever pays any attention to me. And so I go around doing behaviors that let everybody know, don't come near me. I'm not a person you're going to want to pay attention to. It's going to bring that forth, right? So much of this ego behavior has to do with personality, coming forth in a certain way, and then making sure that the world confirms it in that way by how we behave. The thing about ego is, let's see, there's one other thing I want to be sure to say about that. If I have a self that's really fixed, then I have to hold on to it. If anything challenges it, I have to protect, I have to be defensive. Right? Whenever you feel defensive, you know, oh, this ego of mine is not being confirmed the way it needs to be. I mean, that's also the kind of the heart of stress. There are three temperaments that in Buddhism are talked about. These are not absolutes, because you may notice as I go through them that they all apply to you. As I went through them, I thought, oh, this is me, oh, this is me, oh, this is me. Mm-hmm. Right? The first one is, so they are greed, hate, and ignorance. If you're a greed type, you're a hate type, or you're an ignorant type. The problem with the typology is, don't think that it's real. This is just a way to consider, okay? It's a tool for investigation. So the greed type shapes a sense of reality and sense of normalcy by creating and maintaining a style of responsiveness. This is characterized by greed. So how does that work? To feel most affirmed, real and normal, when you're allowed to merge. That's what's called the greed type. So when you're always wanting to be, oh yeah, I know exactly how you feel. Oh that is that's wanting to have the world be all yours, all identified. Anything that comes along and challenges that can be very stressful. And one of the things that comes, if you come into Zen practice, this is not unusual. and a teacher does not respond in a loving way, but stays kind of cool and detached, you can feel like, oh, they don't see me. Have you had that experience of not feeling seen by your Zen teacher? Or anybody who you want to impress or you want to be relating to you, anybody in an authority, in a one-up position, who doesn't really give you the kind of response that confirms that you are one, can be very, very threatening, actually. And you don't want to continue to have a relationship with that person. So that's something to learn about yourself in the way that applies to you. Does that apply to anybody here?
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. It's really useful to recognize that when it's coming up, because sometimes it makes a difference in your ability to self-care or your ability to understand the power relationship with the other person, or whatever. It's good information to know ourselves. If we're so thoroughly organized around that particular way, that is a limit. The next one is the hate. And oddly, the way that this is defined, the hate temperament is the most spacious, the most happy, the most real and normal, having great capacity to emotionally create distance from a new experience that allows the space to, gives them space to analyze and really get a good look at something. So you step way back and you take a look. That is so Zen. That's so much the Zen. A lot of us come wanting to have a way to be less affected by the difficulties in our life. We call it spiritually bypassing. We want to be able to transcend conditions and not be so. So we take up a practice that really is it's really an inquiry. It's a very minute, sustained inquiry into experience. And think that we're going to be spared our difficulties. If we can just get a big enough view, we won't feel. So that's kind of a distancing and a separating mode. And it can feel very claustrophobic or unsatisfying when you can say, well, this is the way it is. This is just the way it is. Well, wait a minute. Let's take action. Let's write letters. This comes up in a lot of different ways. It's important to recognize this particular energy, this organizing principle in ourselves. And then the third is the ignorance type. The way that this is written in one of the sources that I consulted was ignorant insofar as they do not yet comprehend reality. I do, but you don't. You're ignorant. But really, what I think that's pointing to is really having no access to the possibility that things are not the way they seem. So there are many people who have no interest in Zen practice or spiritual practice. None. And sometimes, people who have no interest in spiritual practice actually do have a practice. They don't realize what it is. And through whatever it is, they realize that everything's impermanent. Everything is interrelated with everything else. And that suffering is part of the whole picture. And there's a way to not suffer when we realize the nature of all phenomena. And so artists come to this through music, through painting, through anything that works over a long period of time, looking carefully into some form of phenomena. In Zen, we look into ourselves. That's where we come to that realization that every self that we imagine we are is just temporary. It's formulated by feelings, emotions, physical sensations, energies that move through our body, narratives that we make up and that run constantly, this constant monologue inside. I remember for a period of time, I would just go through my days as though I was in a movie. I was picturing myself moving through, and as though I was in a movie. And I think in various ways, that characterizes how we go. We think we are in some kind of story that is predetermined. So with practice, we gain confidence in our ability to open our view. We open our view, we study, we meditate, first of all, and meditation is infinite in its dimensions. You can meditate for a day, you can meditate for 10 years, you can meditate for 7 years. Every time it's different. You know, that makes a big difference in how that has a consequence for how we approach our life when we are really clear about that. And one last item is that I wanted to mention in this theme is cause and effect, because that's another teaching in Buddhist teachings, that everything has consequences. Everything that we think, we say, and we do has consequences. Everything has consequences, not just people. I mean, you know, that's our work in the world. The worms, the way that they are, have consequences for us. Birds have consequences for us. We have consequences for the water system of the planet. Everything we think is going to either show on our face, come through our words, determine our choices, right? Certainly speech is a potent aspect of how we are as a self. Look at the way that the public dialogue is now so turned toward so much more hate, so much more us and them. So we learn how to really focus on our own behaviors. And next week I'll talk about precepts, because it's so helpful to have certain things that help us reflect on our behavior and our choices. So something like, I'm just thinking of my kids when they were little, about this tall, they would go out in the neighborhood and they'd come back with these beautiful little posies from Mama that they picked from people's gardens. So I gave them a rule that you can't do that. That you can love something and admire it, but if it's in somebody's garden, you need to leave it. So that's a do not steal. Don't take what is not offered, right? So the poppies in the wild fields along the street, you can pick. You know, California poppies, those bright orange ones, they're everywhere. I mean, that's pickable. Dandelions, pickable, beautiful. And also magical, because they begin in one way and they next day they look really different. Let me just open up now if there are any comments or questions that you'd like to bring forward before we finish.
A clarifier. I felt like I could relate to the greed and I could relate to the ignorance one. I couldn't quite get how the getting perspective was about hate.
Distancing.
Okay. Oh, there it is. Okay.
That, yeah.
Interesting.
Did you hear this? Could everybody hear that? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Keeping distance, being cool. Yeah. And distancing sometimes is really skillful.
And important.
Yeah. Anything else? Thank you.